Wow, what an unusual setting. Welcome back to the building. Thank you all. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Manitobans have every reason to celebrate Canada Day with our fellow Canadians, but we also have another reason to celebrate, and that's with pride at the accomplishment of Manitobans as we have together flattened the COVID curve faster, frankly, than many thought was possible, and today are in what many are hailing as the strongest economic recovery position of any province in Canada. We have led the country in protecting, with the possible exception of New Brunswick, I would say, of protecting our citizens from COVID. And we are committed as a government, and I believe all Manitobans share in the optimism that we feel in leading the country in economic recovery from COVID as well. Le Manitoba a mené le pays en matière de protection contre le COVID et nous allons conduire le pays à se remettre après COVID aussi. Un mot explique comment nous l'avons fait et comment nous allons continuer de le faire. Ce mot est ensemble. One word explains how we've had the progress we've had. One word explains how we are going to keep doing that progressing together, and that word is together. Together, we committed ourselves to beating COVID, and we are beating COVID. Together, we said we would keep each other safe, and we have been keeping each other safe. Together, we said that we wanted to help our people get back to work, and we are doing exactly that. And every single Manitoban knows that it is up to us, alone and together, to keep this progress going. We know one thing above all: when COVID loses, Manitobans win. And we are winning. And here's how we will keep winning. Practice safe social distancing. Wash your hands. Sanitize. Stay home if you have symptoms. Stay clear of vulnerable populations. The most important key to economic recovery is social distancing. And every time you practice safe COVID habits, you help get Manitobans back to work. You help give them their lives back. And as we do that, it leads to more confidence in our economy, and it leads in more confidence for consumers, and it leads in more confidence for employers and employees that we're in a safe environment. And that is critical, because together we can create jobs by beating COVID each day, every day. That's how we turn the downward slope of COVID into the upward slope of jobs. That's how we make the V for victory a reality. We don't need an L. L stands for loss. We need a V. That's victory. This economic and fiscal update that the finance minister has delivered today shows the challenges ahead, and these are big, big challenges. La mise à jour économique et financière publiée aujourd'hui montre le défi à venir. C'est un gros problème. We are not out of the woods yet. As I've said from the beginning, this is not a sprint. This is a marathon. We have been successful in preventing COVID from ravaging our healthcare system, unlike, frankly, many other jurisdictions across the country and around the world. But it has still ravaged our finances. Nous avons empêché le COVID de ravager notre système de santé, contrairement à d'autres provinces et pays. Mais cela a quand même ravagé nos finances. So now, we must grow our way back to prosperity. Maintenant, nous devons ramener notre économie à la prospérité. Jobs is job one. Job one is growth. Job one is restarting Manitoba on the road to recovery. And to do all these things, Manitobans know what their job is. And it's everyone's job to stand up to COVID by doing the right things to protect themselves and to protect each other. Thanks for being here today, and I'll invite Scott Fielding, our finance minister, to make some comments. Scott?
Well, thank you, Premier. And Manitoba faces an unprecedented public health and fiscal situation due to COVID-19. We know Canada is in the midst of the worst economic downturn really in decades. Our number one goal as a province is really to keep Manitobans safe. Manitoba has some of the lowest COVID-19 infection rates really across Canada and, in fact, North America. Manitoba is committed to over 2.1 billion to fight COVID-19 and to restart our economy. This is the second highest rate of spending as a percentage from GDP as it relates to the Parliamentary Budget Office. Our programs are focused on getting people back to work while continuing to protect us against the spread of COVID-19. In terms of our financials, pre-COVID, prior to the pandemic, the choices of the previous government have left Manitobans with the highest gross provincial government debt in Canada. Our government has worked extremely hard to put provincial finances in order. We've reduced the deficit, and we have found efficiencies in each and every one of the departments. Our government has replenished the rainy day fund to its highest level we've ever reached. These measures have allowed Manitobans, these measures have allowed the province to be in a better financial position to protect Manitobans when they need it most, like today. Fortunately, Manitoba is predicted to have one of the lowest unemployment rates in Canada this year. Labor force data shows that we have fewer employment hours lost during the pandemic than any other province. Our diversified economy will help Manitobans in the months and years to come. Our diversity will help restart the economy and really protect livelihoods with a strong plan as we move forward. Manitoba was one of the last to go into a shutdown and one of the first to come back out. Our Restart Manitoba plan has put Manitoba on the road to recovery, as the Premier indicated. Manitoba has two strategies to restart our economy. Number one is investments in public health preparedness, and number two, investing in jobs and growth. A recent analysis by the Parliamentary Budget Office in Ottawa shows that Manitoba has spent the second most amongst provinces as a percentage of GDP in terms of the response to COVID-19. The Manitoba government has invested more than $900 million on protecting Manitobans by investing in aggressive PPE procurement, medical research on COVID-19, and updating our healthcare facilities and personal care homes. Over $1.2 billion has also been provided to reduce economic impact and ensure that businesses shut down can now safely restart and bring Manitobans who've lost their jobs temporarily back to work. In terms of our revenues, overall summary revenues is expected to decline by approximately $1.5 billion in 2020-21 compared to our 2020 budget. This scenario, and I want to emphasize it, this scenario is dependent on a V-shaped recovery and really depends on the type of speed of recovery, lost provincial revenues that could be as much as $3 billion. The government of Manitoba is forecasting real gross domestic product to contract by 5% this year and pick up 5% next year. Due to job losses and reduced hours, personal income taxes will see a sharp decline this year and next year. Corporate income taxes will also be down as corporations will begin adapting to the new economic reality. Manitoba's own source revenue impact, things like sales tax, payroll tax, fuel taxes, and net income from places like the Crown corporations and others, will depend on the pace of the recovery, business confidence, and consumer demand. In terms of the impact on our bottom line, COVID-19 is substantially increasing our expenditures and lowering revenues. In 2020-21, deficit has a range between $2.9 billion with a downside risk of close to $5 billion. Manitoba's deficit forecasts are tracked by major banks and rating agencies and show large variations amongst themselves, reflecting the dynamic nature of the data and evolving economic and public health environment. The 2020-21 summary net debt is projected to exceed $29 billion, with a net debt to GDP ratio of nearly 41%, and that's an increase from 34.2% in our budget documents in March. The forecast will continue to be updated as more information becomes available throughout the rest of the year. We know that Manitobans will pay close to $70 million each and every year due to the costs of COVID, the response to COVID, which is the equivalent of building 3 new schools a year, $70 million. Our borrowing program was projected to be around $5.9 billion, but will increase to over $9.5 billion. In conclusion, Manitoba is facing unprecedented fiscal challenge because of COVID-19. Manitobans must grow its way out of this crisis. We are making important investments, and our spending is really designed to protect Manitobans from COVID-19 and to help people get back to work. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Scott, and we'll open it up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Premier and Mr. Minister. We have reporters on the phone with us. They will have an opportunity to ask their questions first. Please proceed.
Hi, Jeff Keel from speaking.
Going to have to speak up a bit, Jeff.
Are you canceling any plans to build any schools even now?
No, Jeff. We're not canceling any plans to build schools. Our intention is to build 20 schools over the next decade in Manitoba. We have a number underway, and we're going to continue to focus on making progress on that front. We need to have more and better schools. As our population grows, our children deserve that, and our teachers and our staff deserve to work in a quality building. So that investment will continue.
And just to follow up, Mr. Premier, with the best case scenario of $2.9 billion deficit, you're talking about obviously making investments to get the economy going, but I take it you're going to have to trim somewhere. Have you thought of that, and where you may be able to find savings?
Well, we began with an exercise it's called wants versus needs analysis. We do it every year. And we invited departments to come up with savings ideas, and it was widely reported that we planned to cut departments by 30% as a consequence. I attempted to answer that the day after it was raised, and I'll keep saying it's an exercise we do every year. It's called a wants and needs analysis. Everybody who runs a small business in this province understands what it is. I think most households do it instinctively. That being said, we've maintained our investments in the public service better than all but two other provinces, according to the Privy Council data, and the Parliamentary Budget Office has also reported on that. So our intention is to try to keep people at work, and that's exactly what we're going to focus on doing going forward, private sector, public sector alike.
Good afternoon, folks. It's Jonas Gilbert from City News. As we do look at this large fiscal hole coming up this year, any thought on perhaps needing to raise the PSC or increase revenues in any way?
No.
All right, thank you. That was easy. And just a quick follow-up as well. There's a large gap we're looking at, 2.9 million best case, 5 billion worst case. I guess, how do you guys manage that moving forward? Do you just adjust weekly? I mean, how do you guys going to balance that potential debt?
Sure. Well, we were the most indebted province going into the pandemic. We've endeavored to invest in things that pay, and we're going to continue to do that. But I would also say that it's critically important to understand the way out of this is, well, there are many tactics I suppose one could use. Certainly we're using all we can, but the principal ones would be investing in infrastructure, continuing to maintain our public service and enhance the way it does business, stimulating the private sector, and most importantly, creating additional opportunities for discretionary income to be used to create jobs. And so that is by way of saying that you don't recover by raising taxes on people. If you take money off the kitchen tables and away from the small businesses of Manitobans, then you are hurting the economy, and that's not our intention. Our intention is to make sure that people have a reward for their work and that we encourage more people to get back to work. And we won't do that by getting back to the old way of just simply jacking up taxes on everybody and thinking that was the way to build an economy. There was just a report by the I think it was the Business Council that coordinated it, but it's a report on our relative competitiveness, and we are still, as a province, very far behind most provinces, certainly west of Quebec, in terms of our tax policies. We've tried to reduce some of them, and we'll continue to pursue those opportunities, but we'll always do it while maintaining our investments in the social services that Manitobans depend upon. We lead the country in investing in health, education, and social services. And I don't see any change in our projections in respect of that. Scott?
Yeah, just to add to the Premier's exactly right. The only thing I would add to that is we base our forecasting off 9 forecasting agencies and bond rating agencies. The reality is things that would impact our economy, of course, the virus, if there would be a second wave that would come in, and the restart of our economy by businesses. So really our focus is protecting Manitobans and livelihoods, and restating and restarting the Manitoba economy is the number 3 things that will really identify how the economy gets back on track.
Hi, Colin Clark from the Brandon Sun here. Mr. Premier, with Westman recovering from the heavy rains that happened on Sunday night and preparing for potentially another huge storm to come through today, is the province going to be offering any assistance or any money to municipalities and regions being hit by this?
Well, as you know, I think, Colin, every municipality has the opportunity to make that decision. The city of Brandon and surrounding Cornwallis and other of your area municipalities will make that call. That's in their realm. Most certainly the province will be ready there to partner with them and support them as we always have been. And our thoughts and prayers are with you folks in Westman right now as you endure this incredible weather event. My minister is, if not there right now, on the way out to tour the area. And we'll do whatever we can to support the area because we know how important Westman is to our economy, but we know most importantly how important Westman people are to our province.
And my follow-up question, Mr. Premier, is I know that the province had increased the borrowing limit it had in place by $5 billion for this year. Are there any plans to spend all of that this year? And if so, what might that look like?
Yeah, our initial borrowing plan in the budget was just over $5.5 billion. The pandemic and the amount of money that we put towards that the Parliamentary Budget Office says is the second most in the country is to put $2.2 billion or $2.1 billion rather towards pandemic relief. And we're also going to pre-finance because of low interest rates about $1.1 billion. So our borrowing program will go from, again, just over $5.5 billion to close to $9.5 billion.
It is our hope that, and this is no knock on the great people of Newfoundland and Labrador, that their province will actually pass us on total debt in about 1.5 years, 2 years. So we'll move to second on total debt. They'll be first, we'll be second.
Catherine Logan from the Feds of Canada. I was just wondering, in March, the forecasted deficit was about $5 billion. Now we're looking at, if things stay the same, about $2.9 billion. What's changed?
What's changed, quite evidently, is that, Catherine, that Manitobans have responded to the challenge better than arguably any other citizens in the world, that Manitobans have been willing to set aside hard-fought for rights and live differently to protect themselves and to protect others has impressed, I think, not only us here, but my colleagues across the country have remarked on it on my calls with the premiers. The Prime Minister himself has noted it. So what's changed is we have the right to be optimistic now. We've earned that right by the behavior we've demonstrated. But let's be clear, when you say it's about half as much projection, remember it's still got a big plus minus and it still depends on doing the right things going forward.
Merci.
Okay, we'll open questions up to the floor. Please proceed.
And you'll forgive Scott and I, we're a little rusty at this.
We'll still introduce ourselves. Brittany from Global News.
Yeah, welcome. And it is, I sincerely say thank you to you all and through you, to all who are not able to be here today for your work in getting the messages out that you have. Most certainly what we're acknowledging today with this projection couldn't be possible if Manitobans hadn't been made aware in many, many different ways, and they must be made aware on a continuous basis of the right things to do through this time. So a sincere thank you to you, and a thank you to your colleagues in the media for your work.
When we look ahead towards our economic recovery, specifically here on the handout we've got on page 16, we look at a positive recovery and a delayed recovery and what can really, those factors that go into both of those. The United States is our largest trading partner. It's obviously a big draw for us here in Manitoba and a lot of businesses here. When you look at what's happening in the US right now, how much of a play does that put into keeping that V and making sure that that is the scenario that we trend towards?
Yes, this is really, really critical to understand. I mean, we're doing a great job here, and I continue to say it, and I know Manitobans deserve to be proud, but we are part of global economy and a national economy. And so we have to look for ways to advance what we've done here elsewhere, in a way, to encourage others to follow the practices that have resulted in more consumer confidence as one aspect, right? But in terms of also the public safety practices that we must adhere to when the economy begins to reopen. For example, with increased travel, not just domestically, but eventually as the borders thin, as they must, to bring back our economic well-being. How do we maintain those practices that protect each other? And that is really a critical thing. This is part of what I'll be after next week as I'm traveling to Ottawa to meet with various leading bright lights, intellectuals, thinkers on the social policy side, on the economic policy side, on the fiscal management side, from a variety of organizations to gather ideas and to prepare for another venture where we will have cabinet ministers also journey to other parts of Canada as we begin to do the work face-to-face, that much of which you would like to think could be done by Skype, but very likely it doesn't get done very effectively that way. So we're going to be embarking on exactly these types of issues in terms of research, looking for ways to make sure that Manitoba in particular obviously continues to demonstrate its leadership in overcoming the challenges of this pandemic.
The documents here talk about the challenge extending into next year as well. You pushed back your promise to cut the PST to next year. Are you still adamant about doing it next year and not pushing it back further? That's actually one of many topics that we'll be addressing and have been addressing together as a team, and will continue to as we move forward. What is the best way to re-enliven our economic progress? Is it lowering the PST? Is it other investments? We're in the process of, and on an ongoing basis, I think, of evaluating where our course of action may be. I wouldn't want to commit to that at this point in time. I think that there's just too many plus minuses right now with respect to COVID to do that. But what we have done is we've certainly, through Scott and through others in our cabinet team, have done a tremendous job. We've given commitments to our partners that we feel are important in terms of their funding. We've assured funding, for example, to our municipal partners so that they know that their baseline funding is there. We've assured the funding to our post-secondary partners, universities, community colleges, to make sure that their funding is there so that they're working from a position of relative confidence, as much as we can give them as a government that is profoundly impacted in terms of revenue loss, as you're seeing today. To do that, I think, demonstrates our real commitment to working with our partners to rebuild our economy together.
Is it possible we could see the PST increase?
No.
If not jack up taxes, how will you eventually strive to get us out of this new hole?
Well, frankly, we have one way to do that, and that's to get people back to work. And so we've been focusing on doing that, and as you know, emphasizing that happens safely. Just in the last few days, we've already had 644 Manitobans get off the CERB program because we've offered to offset the penalty they would suffer if they worked more than $1,000, if they earned more than $1,000 in a month. So just as one example where people have chosen to go back to work As more people choose to go back to work, clearly more businesses can begin to reopen on a fuller basis. And of course, the millions, hundreds of millions that we're investing in other aspects of healthcare, testing, tracking, preventative measures, and much of that, Scott, with the support of a lot of Manitoba firms as well.
Just further to what the Premier said, really our goal is a safe restart, no COVID comeback, I think we've talked about. And really our two strategies to restart the economy is investing in public health preparedness, just like the Premier had said. That's the most important thing. We know what's been happening in some of the southern parts of the United States. And investing in jobs and growth. That's the way we're going to grow ourselves out of this pandemic. Is a very unique situation in the world history of economies. So that's really important.
What do these numbers mean for labor relations, and contract negotiations, given the recent court ruling? You can't legislate zeros. You've got this large deficit. What is your approach now to the collective agreements?
Get back to the table.
What can you offer?
Get back to the table. Don't negotiate through the media. We're ready to work with our public sector unions. We have been from the get-go, and it's time to get back to the table and have those discussions now.
Besides seeing a COVID comeback really hit us here in the province harder, what would be the other biggest factors that would reshape our recovery?
Oh, well, it's a tough one, Brittany, because we're such a diverse economy. There are many, right? Conversely, because we're a diverse economy, the fact that there are many gives us a little bit of protection, doesn't it? Seeing these flood events like we're seeing in Westman right now should remind all of us of how critical success in our ag communities is. And, having a bumper crop this year would be a really good thing. When the farmers make money, we all make money. So that's one example, but it's true as well that we're a big manufacturing province, and so we need international markets. And so we don't need to see this COVID circumstance that's arisen in other jurisdictions, not specifically and solely the United States, but that is our major trading partner, of course. We don't need to see those things continue. It's better for us if COVID is beaten in other jurisdictions, not just our own. We continue to be in charge here in Manitoba of our own. That doesn't mean we're blind to the realities of what's impacting our neighbors and friends.
As you head to Ottawa next week, what are your kind of top discussion topics that are going to happen with the Prime Minister, or asks, or that you'd like to see on the table from him?
I want to be clear, the Prime Minister, we haven't been able to confirm with the PM yet. We're working on meeting with Chrystia Freeland, and I look forward to doing that. And we're meeting with numerous business groups and associations, as well as what I call think tanks, various commissions. I'll give you a detailed report of our discussions on the return.
Are you worried about credit downgrades given the 41% debt to GDP ratio?
Well, we've already seen the national credit rating downgraded, although it wasn't, I don't think, a significant impact on the bond market. But nonetheless, never good to see a credit rating downgrade. We've seen 3 in Manitoba, and we've really focused under Scott's leadership and in a real way focused on trying to restore reliability in our projections, and that's tough today, right? Because we, as you well know, we're in an unprecedented, uncharted waters situation, and so the plus minuses on our projections are going to be. Let's face it. I think the Prime Minister used a phrase the other day when he was asked about financial projections. I don't know if I can find it, but it was something about the dangers of conjecture, and there are those dangers, but it's important that you realize that we're dedicated to getting on the right track, and we have done that prior to this pandemic, and we've been very reliable in our projections and have had very favorable reaction from our partners who we must borrow money from in respect of that. So that's improved the relationship very, very much. We want to continue to make sure that relationship is strong because, of course, these are the people, just as your banker might be critical in you renegotiating your mortgage, and that might have an impact on your family, so is it critical when we're dealing with Manitobans' financial best interests that we have a good, strong relationship with our money people.
I think further to what the Premier had said, this isn't a unique experience that's just happening in Manitoba. It's happening all over the world in terms of finances. And so that's something that all governments are looking at. I think the track record of this government has been financial prudence, and the bond rating agencies have spoke of our commitment to fiscal balance. So that's really important as we move forward. So that's a part of our trend. The bond rating agencies have also said that Manitoba, has an ability to weather this better than most other provinces because of our diverse economy and because of some of the work that our government has done to regain some fiscal sanity back to our finances, I guess I'll say.
Budget being balanced, given that we're now looking at a 5% economic shrinkage this year, 5% growth next year. If those projections hold true, when are you looking at a balanced budget?
Balanced budget is an outcome we all desire. It's one that Manitobans understand. It's been something we haven't had for a number of years. And they understand the level of our debt is a risk. Everybody understands that. I talked to some strong lifelong friends of mine who are active union members, and they have said, we know there's no job security in a company that's leaking $1 billion every year. So it's kind of common sense to them too. I think the reality of the situation, though, is that we have to do what we have to do now to get our economy back on track. And if that means more infrastructure investment, we're going to do that. We've already committed to that. If that means ensuring that our civil service is supported, we've done that very significantly. And if it means investing in extra preventative measures, we're going to continue to do that. And we're committed to maintaining our investments in our schools, as I referenced earlier, and maintaining the support we're giving to our partners. That being said, we can't drift back to the days of billion-dollar deficits on a yearly basis. Those are structural deficits. We can't return to that. And so we know that, and so it's balancing those things that is our priority as we move forward.
Will you strive,
I won't give you that today.
will you strive to find more efficiencies within government as you did in the first term of the president?
Oh, always. I mean, that's something that no one should be afraid of. Everyone should anticipate, especially as we have right now, arguably over half our people working from home. You have an opportunity here to take a look at how you do things. And it should be government unusual right now, really. That's what we have a subcommittee of our Economic Opportunities Group that I announced about it 6 weeks ago, working on several projects right now. One of them is on how we can improve how we deliver government services effectively to customers in the post-pandemic age, and there's some tremendous opportunities there. It doesn't necessarily mean fewer people, but it means getting a better outcome. And we have to be pursuing better outcomes for our people as we face this challenge together.
Besides the PST drop, is there anything else right now that is going to have to wait?
Well, I think, I don't know, there are a number of things we've taken some measures to control that we're going to continue with. We do less traveling as ministerial people than was the case 10 years ago, but arguably, I'm not saying that as a knock on the previous NDP government. The technologies that are available nowadays for group meetings and so on are better. So we've reduced our expenditures in a number of categories. Our MLAs to a person have taken a pay reduction to demonstrate our solidarity with our people in the province many of them are hurting. I've taken a pay reduction. Our senior political staff have all taken pay reductions, significant pay reductions. So we're with Manitobans in this respect. But we recognize that we want to get people back to work, and they have to have the opportunity to get back to work, and that means consumer confidence has to grow, and that can't grow unless we keep doing the fundamental things right as people. And so I know many of you have harped on this, and good for you. We need to make sure that we're encouraging people to do the right things to protect themselves. We've saved lives. You look at the numbers. Look at the numbers across Canada. Look at the numbers around the world. And remember that those aren't just numbers. Those are people.
Well, I think further to what the Premier said, right? I think it's all about having an important restart plan, and that's what this government does. Again, it's preparing ourselves. The health side is really, really important, but above and beyond that is providing supports for businesses to get back up and running, and that's why we are happy that Parliamentary Budget Office has said that Manitoba is spending second amongst all provinces in terms of the supports to businesses. So you have a strong restart program that's going to grow the economy. We'll be able to grow ourselves out of this situation.
Should mention we passed 7,000 students employed with our program already. That's an all-time record by a mile for Manitoba, and there's much more to do yet. We've got some other initiatives that we're going to be promoting for employing students, but also we changed the requirements for the job subsidy, the 50%, up to 50% job subsidy, and retroactively opened them up to when we started phase 2, remember, first week of June. And we've had really significant uptake on that as well. And our GAP program is now over 7,000 small businesses. So each of our programs is, as the economy's opening and businesses are getting back, they're starting to use the programs to help them get back. That's good to see.
Do you have an update on your risk recognition program that closed yesterday?
Should be finished next week. I understand that it should be announced next week. Is it, or maybe this week? I'm getting a signal, hand signal. I believe that we got to around 90,000. I shouldn't say that. There's going to be an announcement. I shouldn't do the announcement today. There's going to be an announcement. But again, as we have, sincerely, we want to thank again our frontline people across the province for their work.
Throughout this pandemic, you've been accused of being very tight-fisted, and you've put forward your own figures here about how much you're spending. And now you're talking about possibly further delaying the PST cut. Has this whole episode altered your outlook? Has it changed your outlook in some way?
I don't like the free press as much as I used to. But other than that, no.
Your approach to cost control versus...
I want to just say on one specific issue I have to raise, and it's unfortunate I have to raise it. It was reported by one media outlet that there was a report filed by one media outlet in Manitoba that I had spoken on a premier's call with the Prime Minister against the phrase systemic racism being in a joint statement that was issued by the premiers and Prime Minister. This report, and I don't normally speak about personal confidential calls, but I have to be clear now. This is false. Okay. The column that was written about the story was false. The story's sources were wrong, and this is not the first time, but I will not stand back anymore and watch as these kinds of stories run. So, false story, erroneous source, column wrong.
But back to my question. Have you, and I realize it's open-ended, so back to my question, has this changed your outlook in terms of addressing government finances? It was largely through spending controls before, now you're opening up the tap somewhat. Has it changed your view of Keynesian economics or government economics, public finances?
It's reinforced the importance of prudent leadership, and that's what our team has demonstrated in government. I'm proud of my cabinet. I'm proud of my colleagues in government. We've stood strong in doing the right things, not the easy things. We haven't given in to throwing money at problems. Rather, we've invested in solutions right from the start. We're leading the way in recovery ahead of every other jurisdiction. And apart from New Brunswick, I would say we've led the way in fighting COVID. That's a pretty compelling record. I have repeatedly given credit to Manitobans because I believe that's where the credit belongs. But I would also say that it is pretty clear that this government has acted to preempt a lot of the problems that other jurisdictions have faced. We've helped in many, many ways. We've kept COVID largely out of our northern communities. We've kept it out of our jails. We've kept it out of our seniors' homes, and we've helped re-emphasize constantly, and I give credit to the media for this as well, the message has been repeated to Manitobans, and Manitobans have listened, and they have cared for one another in the way they've responded. And I'm tremendously proud. Today's potential for a V would only be realistic if Manitobans had demonstrated their willingness to listen and to do the right things to protect each other. But it will only become reality if Manitobans continue to demonstrate those same qualities as we move forward.
This government tends to take a made in Manitoba approach to...
Just like Carol, sorry, Brittany, but Carol hasn't had it.
Just to go back to the systemic racism issue, how do you define systemic racism, and do you think we have systemic racism in Manitoba?
I think that actions matter at least as much as adjectives, Carol. And our actions have been to stand up for economic opportunity and social opportunity for minorities. We have put more people into positions of leadership in our government, have more candidates, visible minority candidates and Indigenous candidates than ever before. We've had more people on our agencies, boards and commissions than ever before. We've invested hundreds of millions of dollars in giving people their lives back in the Inner Lake when they were flooded out. As you know, they were waiting for half a decade to get back home. We've got tens of thousands of acres of treaty land back in the hands of First Nations who shouldn't have been deprived of the land in the first place. So, I mean, actions speak louder than words. I was part of the government that launched the apology for residential schools and set up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. So you know these things about me. And so, you know, being essentially accused of being a racist in an article in the paper that I used to have such respect for, it's hurtful. It is. It's hurtful and it's wrong. So I just simply say, I think all of us, those who are visible minorities, those who are Indigenous, those of us who come from the third world and come to a new place, want to be treated as equals and respected. But that includes your Premier.
What happened at that meeting, though?
No, it's a private, confidential meeting. The way those meetings work, and the only way they'll ever work, is that the information is not leaked out of the meeting. Otherwise, you're not going to get frank, honest discussion at those meetings. These are confidential meetings. But I am telling you, on this occasion only, I will reveal something of the discussion by telling you it is frankly totally false that I interjected a comment of opposition to a joint statement referencing systemic racism as a problem in our country. I support it by my deeds. And I again will tell you, reporting falsely on a comment from a confidential conversation is not my idea of good journalism.
Did you support the inclusion of that phrase in the statement?
I didn't oppose it. I speak to items when I have a concern, or if I'm promoting something.
So you didn't speak one way or the other?
Well, there's
on that topic.
There's 13 people on the call.
Yeah.
We're talking about a dozen to 15 issues. I don't speak to every point.
Right.
If I'd had a concern, I would have raised it. You've known me a long time. You know I would. And I'm telling you, I did not. Le Devoir was wrong, and now the Free Press is quoting Le Devoir. That's a danger in journalism. When somebody makes a false report and then somebody else takes it as fact, now you've got repetition of a false statement. So I have no idea. I have no idea.
You didn't weigh in one way or the other on that topic.
That is correct, yeah. But I would weigh in on the cause of, as I did when the protest was scheduled for here. I encouraged people to participate if they felt strongly about the issue, and I have in my own life. But I would continue to say I think what people want is action, and that's what our government's been pursuing in many, many different ways on many different fronts. So we'll continue to pursue it with action. I think people want that more than adjectives.
Mr. Premier, you've been big on Made in Manitoba plans when it comes to whether it's carbon tax or green efficiency, this plan here. Is there any other province that you've looked to in coming up with your plans when it comes to COVID and the restart that you think has done a really good job, or pieces of it that you wanted to make sure was in a part of your plan?
I think we've done a really good job. I think also, though, that every other premier and their governments has faced this, I think, with focus and enthusiasm. I'm not here to lord it over the other premiers. There have been other provinces that have had initially more exposure to COVID, more international travel, for example, as a percentage of the population, things like that. But I would certainly not write our performance down to luck or a flip of a coin. We took immediate action. We took early action on many fronts to protect the people of our province. We took actions, for example, on seniors' homes and hospital visitations. I can tell you I wasn't able to see my sister in the last number of weeks of her life because we took those measures. But the fact is it saved lives. Not hers, but others. And that's pretty powerful action. So I think it speaks very well to the commitment that we have to be preemptive and foresighted in the actions we take. Not just to throw money at a problem, but to actually take measures that work. That's what our government's done, and I'm very proud of our team in government for their actions.
Are you planning to go to Westman to visit any of the storm hit areas?
I'll be in Ottawa tomorrow, Carol. Ron Schuler's out there today, so I've already spoken to the AMM reps, and I've asked Ron to convey our personal sympathies to everybody in the area.
Personal concerns about going to Ottawa?
Yes, of course I'm concerned. I'm a high-risk person, right? I'm a senior with asthma. I'm not denying my concerns. Not too many things intimidate me. COVID is one of the things that does.
And just with
I'll
this-
take every precaution. I've spoken at length with Dr. Rusin. I'm sorry, Ian, cut you off. I've spoken to Dr. Rusin. I'm going to exercise all the protocols carefully, but I do think we have to continue with the work that a government must do. And we can't do all of that by phone, and we can't do all of that by Skype.
Do you anticipate that you will have to isolate when you come back?
I'm exempt from the isolation requirements, but Dr. Rusin suggested take 4 or 5 days. So I'm going to take 4 or 5 days monitor. That was his recommendation to me. So that's why I'm going down a little earlier than my first meeting, just to make sure I'm not giving somebody their COVID, and the same when I come home.
Just with in reference to the supplement, I don't think I saw anything about the rainy day fund. What's the status of that fund? Has that been depleted?
Came in handy, Scott, hey?
Yeah, it was depleted to about $110 million under the former government, and it was over $800 million, which is the highest level. So it allowed us to be prepared, financially prepared, in case you have a rainy day or a situation where there's a pandemic that happens. So I think the work that the Premier did to ensure that is there allowed us to be more prepared for something like a pandemic when it happens.
Has it been depleted?
Well, that would be part of our regiment, our dollars and cents that go towards the budget. We know revenues have been down by 1.5 million. We know expenditures will be up by $1 billion, so it will be used this year.
It's really helpful, though, as it is in a personal financial plan, right, to have a little cushion or a little bit of an emergency fund. Very helpful, because then you don't need to run cap in hand to your lenders right away on the basis of an emergency. I would say, too, it's an issue that we haven't revisited for some weeks, but I did, as you know, make the proposal that Ottawa could borrow on the province's behalf and then pass on their credit rating. You recall this issue. And we did kind of get a half win out of that, because what they did was they then urged the Bank of Canada to do what they didn't want to do themselves. This did narrow our margins, or the gap between what Ottawa pays and what we pay, by approximately half. So it was a significant savings, and as we go forward, I would hope that Ottawa would continue with that strategy of having the Bank of Canada facilitate, especially those provinces that have liquidity challenges, and Manitoba is one of those, absolutely. But this will save some money, and it's not an insignificant thing, so I have thanked the Prime Minister for the initiative in that respect.
As we dig out of this, out of the debt that we're taking on now, how do you prioritize rebuilding that rainy day fund, especially with all the extra debt that is being taken on?
Well, I guess the strategy are really twofold. It's restarting the economy, just as mentioned. So we've got to make sure we're prepared and we're protecting Manitobans from health. You don't want to see what's happening in some of in the southern part of the United States, where you have kind of a false start and people having to go down. So that's number one. The second piece is putting together a strong plan to rebuild the economy. The supports that are in place, not just to individuals, but businesses. And if you look what the Parliamentary Budget Office has suggested, we've made those investments. We're the second most of all provinces in terms of those investments. If you make those investments, businesses are going to grow and prosper, and that will grow ourselves. One of the avenues is to grow ourselves out of the situation that we're in through COVID.
But at what point do you start contributing back into that rainy day fund? Or do you
Well,
have a point where you...
We'll present next year's budget next year. This is we're in the first quarter projection right now, and as you know, there's a big plus minus. It's a fair question, Josh, but I think it's premature for us to get into this. As the Prime Minister said, it's a bit of conjecture at this point. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.